breast armor plate cracked open in my hands and suddenly 50 alien warriors were staring at me like I just committed the galaxy's worst crime. And honestly, I had no idea how helping someone not die from faulty equipment turned into the most mortifying moment of both our lives. But here we are. So before this gets any worse, hit that subscribe button because you're going to want to see how this disaster unfolds. My name is David Chen, and 3 months ago I was just a mechanical engineer working contract jobs across Washington state when the Valorans arrived, not with weapons or threats, but with broken ships and desperate need, and somehow I became the only human they trusted to touch their sacred war gear, which, as it turns out, was a way bigger deal than anyone told me. The Valoran command ship hovered over Seattle like a crimson cathedral, all swept edges and gleaming metal that caught the rain in ways that made it look alive. And I remember standing in the loading bay that first day thinking these people looked like they'd stepped out of mythology, tall, powerfully built, with deep bronze skin that seemed to hold its own light and eyes that burned gold when they were angry or amber when they were calm. And right now, staring at the woman in front of me, those eyes were definitely amber, soft, uncertain, beautiful in a way that made my tools feel heavy in my hands. Her name was Sera, Commander Sera of the 5th Tactical Unit, and she stood rigid as steel in the center of my workspace, her jaw set, her shoulders locked, every inch of her radiating the kind of discipline that came from a lifetime of war. But there was something else too, something fragile underneath all that armor, a nervousness that made her fingers twitch every time I got close. "Commander, I really need you to take this off," I said, keeping my voice gentle, professional, the way you talk to someone holding a live grenade, because that's essentially what she was wearing. A chest plate with a structural fracture running straight through the power core housing. One wrong move and the thermal regulator could blow, not enough to kill her, but enough to cause serious burns and a lot of pain. "No," she said immediately, her voice clipped, formal, the kind of tone that didn't invite argument. "Valoran warriors do not remove armor in the presence of outsiders. It is forbidden. It is—" She hesitated, and I swear I saw color rise in her cheeks. "Intimate." I blinked, tools still in hand, trying to process that. "Intimate? Commander, I'm trying to keep you from getting third-degree burns. Not—" "I understand your concern." She cut me off, her accent thick, melodic, every word carefully chosen. "But I cannot remove it. You must repair it while I wear it. This is the only way." I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair, looking at the hairline fracture that was steadily growing, the metal already beginning to warp from the heat building inside, and I absolutely knew this was going to end badly, but what was I supposed to do? Let her walk around with a ticking time bomb strapped to her chest? "Okay," I said finally, setting my tools down in a neat line. "But you need to stay absolutely still, and I mean statue still, because if this plate shifts even a millimeter while I'm working on the internal supports, the whole thing could—" "I understand," she said, and then she sat, straight-backed and tense on the reinforced workbench I'd set up, her hands gripping her knees so tightly I could see the tension in her forearms. That was my first mistake, thinking I could fix this without consequences. I moved closer, close enough to smell the rain still clinging to her armor, close enough to see the way her breathing had gone shallow and controlled, and I started working, my fingers tracing the edge of the crack, feeling for the stress points, the places where the metal had fatigued beyond repair. "You're very calm for someone working on volatile equipment," she said suddenly, her voice quieter now, almost curious. "You're very calm for someone wearing volatile equipment," I countered, not looking up, focusing on the tiny screws that held the inner panel in place. "Most people would be panicking right now." "Valorans do not panic," she said, but her voice wavered just slightly, betraying her. "Right?" I said, fighting a smile. "You just vibrate with controlled concern." Her eyes snapped to mine, wide, startled, and I saw something flicker there, surprise maybe or embarrassment. "I do not." "Relax, Commander," I said gently, returning to my work. "I'm not judging. I'm just saying, it's okay to be nervous. This situation is objectively terrifying." She didn't respond, but I felt her settle slightly, her shoulders dropping just a fraction. And for a moment, the only sound was the soft clink of my tools against metal and the distant hum of the ship's engines. Then the crack spread. I heard it before I saw it. A tiny metallic whisper that made my stomach drop, and when I looked up, Sera's eyes were already on me wide, knowing. "David," she said, my name strange and soft in her accent. "How bad?" "Don't move." I said quickly, my hands already reaching for the stabilizer clamp. Seriously, don't even breathe too hard. I just need to. The clamp slipped. My palm was sweating, my fingers shaking just slightly from adrenaline, and the tool fell, bounced off her knee, clattered to the floor. We both stared at it. That's not good, she whispered. No, I agreed, already grabbing a backup clamp. But we're okay. I just need 30 more seconds to... The armor groaned, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the air, and I watched in slow-motion horror as the chest plate began to separate, the crack widening, the internal seals releasing with a hiss of pressurized air. David! Sera's voice was tight, panicked now, all that warrior composure shattering. I know, just hold. But physics doesn't wait for permission. The plate gave way with a sharp metallic snap. The two have swinging open like doors, and suddenly Sera was sitting there, exposed from collarbone to stomach, her underlayer suit doing absolutely nothing to preserve her dignity. And her expression, oh God, her expression was pure devastation. No, she breathed, her hands flying up to cover herself. No, this cannot. The workshop door exploded open, and 6 Valoran warriors stormed in, weapons ready, eyes scanning for threats, and then they all froze, staring at their commander, half undressed, me leaning over her with tools in hand, both of us caught in the worst possible moment. Time stopped, everyone stared, and I realized with absolute certainty that I was about to cause an intergalactic incident. But that was only the beginning. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds, which doesn't sound like much until you're living it, until you're watching 6 heavily armed alien warriors process a scene that looks exactly like their respected commander being violated by the human they'd been ordered to trust. And in that moment, I understood that context means nothing when appearances scream guilt. The tallest warrior, a man with scars crossing his bronze face like war poetry and eyes that burned with protective fury, stepped forward, his hand moving to the plasma blade at his hip, and his voice when he spoke was low, dangerous, barely controlled. Step away from Commander Sera, human now. I raised my hands immediately, tools clattering to the floor. This isn't what it looks like. I was repairing her armor and... Silence? Another warrior snapped, a woman with silver markings along her temples that indicated rank I didn't understand. We saw what we saw. You have dishonored our commander, violated our sacred customs, touched what is forbidden. Nobody touched anything. I protested, but even as I said it, I knew how insane it sounded, how thoroughly the evidence contradicted me, because Sera was still sitting there, armor open, hands pressed against herself, her face a shade of deep crimson that I'd never seen on Valoran skin before, and she wasn't saying anything, wasn't defending me, wasn't explaining. She was just frozen in absolute mortification. The scarred warrior's blade hummed to life, casting blue light across the workshop. Commander Sera, are you harmed? Did this human force you? No. Sera finally found her voice, and it cracked slightly, shaking with emotion I couldn't identify. No, he did not force anything. I asked him to repair my armor. I insisted he do it while I wore it. This is my fault, not his. But her defense only made things worse. I could see it in the way the warriors exchanged glances, the way their expressions shifted from anger to something more complex, more knowing, and the woman with silver markings actually smiled, just slightly, just enough to make my blood run cold. You asked him? She repeated slowly, deliberately. To remove your armor in private. To repair it? Sera said desperately. The distinction is significant. The distinction is cultural, the scarred warrior said, and his blade powered down, but the intensity in his gaze didn't fade. Commander, you know what this means. You know how this will be interpreted by the council, by your unit, by everyone who hears of this. Sera's hands were shaking now. I could see them trembling against her chest. It means nothing. It was a mechanical necessity. There is no deeper meaning. There is always deeper meaning, the woman said, and her voice had gone soft, almost gentle, like she was trying to comfort rather than accuse. Armor removal is sacred. It is the first step of bonding. It is how our people have signified choosing a mate for generations. You cannot simply dismiss. I dismiss it, Sera said firmly, but her voice was too high, too strained. I dismiss all of it. The human was helping me. That is all. There is no bond, no choosing no. She cut herself off, closing her eyes, and I watched her physically gather herself, pulling that iron discipline back around her like a shield. You will leave now, all of you. You will speak of this to no one. That is an order. The warriors hesitated, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Commander, with respect, we cannot simply leave, she repeated. And this time her voice carried the full weight of command, the authority of someone who'd led soldiers through impossible situations. Now, they left, but slowly, reluctantly, with backward glances that promised this wasn't over. And, when the door finally sealed behind them, the silence that filled the workshop was somehow worse than the confrontation. Heavier, loaded with everything we weren't saying. I found my voice first. Commander, I am so sorry. I should have insisted you remove the armor. I should have. You did nothing wrong, she said quietly, still not looking at me, still holding her armor closed with white-knuckled hands. I was stubborn. I was foolish. I caused this situation, and now. Her voice broke, just slightly, just enough to reveal the woman underneath the warrior. Now everyone will believe we are bonded. I stared at her. Bonded like married? Like choosing, she corrected. Like announcing to my entire people that you are my intended mate, that we have begun the sacred process of joining. And once that belief takes root, David, it cannot be extracted. Valorans do not forget, do not forgive misunderstandings of this magnitude. I sat down heavily on my tool chest, trying to process that. Okay, so we just explain, we tell them exactly what happened. Show them the broken armor, the repair logs, make them understand this was purely mechanical. They won't care, Sera said, and finally she looked at me, her amber eyes bright with something that might have been tears. They will see what they want to see, a human who dared to touch their commander's armor, a warrior who allowed it, and they will draw the only conclusion that makes sense in our culture. I ran a hand over my face, feeling the weight of this disaster settling onto my shoulders. What happens now? Now, Sera said, and her voice had gone flat, defeated. You will be summoned before the council, questioned about your intentions, your worthiness, your understanding of our customs. They will examine every interaction we have had, looking for evidence of this bond they believe exists. And you? I asked. She smiled, but it was broken, sad. I will be celebrated. That didn't make sense. Celebrated for what? For choosing, she whispered. For finding a mate. For opening myself to connection. Valorans value bonding above all else. Above rank. Above duty. Above personal preference. They will see this as a triumph, not a tragedy. I watched her struggle with the armor, trying to pull the broken plates back together, trying to cover herself, and something in my chest twisted, sharp and painful. Here, I said, moving closer slowly, carefully. Let me help. She flinched back. You've helped enough? Sera? I said, using her name without the title, and she froze. Let me help, please. You can't walk through the ship like this. For a long moment, she just stared at me, searching my face for something I didn't understand, and then, slowly, she nodded, lowering her hands, letting me see the full extent of the damage, the broken armor, the exposed suit underneath, all of it. I worked quickly, efficiently, using emergency clamps to hold the plates together, creating a temporary seal that would last until I could do a proper repair. And the whole time, she watched me, silent, her breathing shallow, her expression unreadable. There, I said finally, stepping back. That should hold, but you need to come back tomorrow so I can. I cannot come back, she said immediately. Commander, Sera, she corrected quietly. If we are to be bonded in the eyes of my people, you should call me Sera. I stared at her. We're not actually bonded. I know, she said, and there was something in her voice, something complicated and raw. But they believe we are, and that belief will shape everything that happens next. So perhaps we should stop fighting it and start surviving it. Surviving it. I repeated. What does that mean? She stood, carefully testing the repaired armor. It means you and I are about to become the most talked about scandal in Valoran history. And if we want to make it through with our dignity intact, we need to present a united front. A united front, I said slowly. You mean pretend we're actually... I mean adapt. She cut me off. I mean recognize that sometimes the truth doesn't matter as much as the story people believe. And right now, David Chen, the story they believe is that you and I have chosen each other. She moved toward the door, her steps controlled, measured every inch the commander again despite everything that had just happened. Rest tonight. Tomorrow the council will summon you, and when they do... She paused, her hand on the door panel. Try not to make things worse. The door opened, she left, and I stood alone in my workshop, surrounded by tools and broken armor pieces, wondering how the hell helping someone had turned into this. What she said next changed everything. But I didn't know that yet. I didn't know that tomorrow I'd be standing in front of the Valoran High Council. I didn't know that Sera's people had already started planning our bonding ceremony, and I definitely didn't know that somewhere in all this chaos and confusion and forced proximity, something real was starting to grow, something neither of us was ready for. But that revelation was still hours away. The Valoran Council chamber looked like something built to intimidate, all soaring ceilings and crimson banners that hung from columns carved with glyphs I couldn't read, and standing in the center of that vast space, surrounded by 7 council members who watched me with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. I finally understood why Sera had looked so defeated yesterday, because this wasn't a hearing, it was a judgment already passed, and I was just here to confirm their beliefs. The eldest council member, a woman with silver threaded through her dark hair and eyes that held centuries of accumulated wisdom, spoke first, her voice resonating through the chamber like a bell. David Chen of Earth, you stand before us accused of... She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. Of engaging in sacred bonding rituals with Commander Sera without proper authorization, without understanding of our customs, without respect for the significance of your actions. With respect, Council Elder, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. I didn't engage in any rituals. I was repairing damaged armor. That's all. There was no intention of... Intention is irrelevant. Another council member interrupted, a man with military bearing and scars that suggested decades of combat. You removed Commander Sera's armor in private. You saw her unprotected. You touched the sacred plates that shield her from the world. These actions, regardless of your claimed purpose, constitute the first stage of bonding. I felt my frustration rising. So if a doctor treats a wounded warrior, that's bonding too? If an armor smith repairs battle damage, they're automatically engaged? That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense within our culture, the silver-haired elder said, and her voice had sharpened. Which you clearly do not understand, human. Our armor is not merely protection, it is identity. It is soul made visible. To allow someone to remove it, to stand vulnerable before them, is to offer trust so profound that it becomes sacred, and Commander Sera offered you that trust. She didn't offer it, I protested. She was wearing faulty equipment that could have hurt her. I was doing my job. Your job, the military council member said, leaning forward, was to repair ships and equipment, not to intimately handle our commander's personal armor. You overstepped your authority, human, and now you must face the consequences. The word consequences hit like a physical blow. What consequences? The elder's expression softened slightly. Normally, unauthorized bonding initiation would result in exile for the human and dishonor for the warrior. But Commander Sera has formally declared her acceptance of the bond, which changes everything. I felt the ground shift underneath me. She what? This morning, she appeared before us and stated clearly that she chose you, that the armor removal was consensual, that she welcomes the bond you have begun. The elder continued, watching me carefully. Which means you are no longer accused, David Chen. You are simply required to fulfill your obligation. Obligation, I repeated numbly. To complete the bonding, she said simply. To stand beside Commander Sera through the ceremonial stages, to learn our customs, to become part of our people or... She paused significantly. To formally reject her, which would bring her great dishonor and likely end her military career. The chamber spun slightly. You're saying I either have to pretend to be in a relationship I'm not in, or I destroy her life? We're saying you must honor the bond you initiated, the military member said coldly. Whether you intended it or not, whether you understood it or not, you engaged in sacred ritual with one of our most respected commanders, and our culture demands follow-through. This is insane, I said, and I knew I shouldn't, knew challenging them was stupid, but the words came anyway. You can't force people into relationships based on a misunderstanding. We force nothing, the elder said, and her voice had gone steel hard. We simply hold you accountable for your actions. If you wish to reject Commander Sera, you are free to do so. Speak now, and we will release you from all obligation. She said it like an offer, but it was a trap. I could see it in her eyes, because if I rejected Sera now, publicly, in front of the council, it wouldn't just end her career, it would humiliate her, brand her as unwanted, unworthy, and somehow, despite knowing her for less than a week, despite this whole situation being absolutely insane, I couldn't do that to her. I don't reject her, I heard myself say, and the words felt both wrong and inevitable. But I need time. I need to understand what I'm agreeing to. You need to speak with Commander Sera, the elder said, and I swear I saw approval flicker in her ancient eyes. Which has been arranged. She waits for you in the garden of reflection. Go to her, human, talk honestly, and perhaps you will find that this bond you stumbled into is not the burden you believe it to be. They dismissed me just like that, waved me away like I was a problem solved, and I walked out of that chamber feeling like I just agreed to something I didn't understand, committed to something I couldn't take back. The Garden of Reflection turned out to be a biodome on the ship's upper level, filled with plants that glowed softly in the artificial twilight, their leaves shimmering with bioluminescence that painted everything in shades of blue and violet, and standing in the center of it all, her back to me, her armor gleaming, was Sera. You told them you chose me, I said, not bothering with greetings or formalities. Why would you do that? She didn't turn around. Because if I didn't, you would have been exiled and I would have been disgraced, and this seemed like the less destructive option. Less destructive? I repeated, moving closer. Sera, you just committed yourself to a fake relationship with a human you barely know. How is that less destructive? Because at least this way we control the narrative, she said, finally turning to face me, and in the blue-violet light, her eyes looked almost otherworldly. If I had admitted the truth, that you accidentally triggered our bonding customs through mechanical repair, the council would have seen me as either foolish or weak, unable to maintain proper boundaries, unfit for command. I stared at her, seeing the calculation in her expression, the strategic thinking that had nothing to do with emotion. So this is about protecting your career. Yes, she said simply, then hesitated. And perhaps protecting you as well. Something in my chest twisted. I don't need protection. You do, she said quietly. More than you realize, some council members wanted you expelled from the ship entirely, deemed too dangerous to Valoran customs to remain. I convinced them otherwise, but that protection only lasts as long as our bond appears legitimate. I ran a hand through my hair, frustration and confusion warring in my gut. How long? How long what? How long do we have to keep this up? This fake bonding thing? When can we end it without destroying both our lives? Sera's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across her face before she locked it down. Valoran bonding traditionally unfolds over 4 phases. First is armor removal, which we've completed. Second is public acknowledgement, which happened today. Third is ceremonial declaration, which typically occurs within 2 weeks. And fourth is final joining, which, okay, stop, I cut her off. Are you saying we have to go through 3 more stages of fake relationship rituals before we can end this? No, she said, and her voice had gone soft. I'm saying we go through the public stages, we satisfy my people's expectations, and then quietly, privately, we let the bond fade, we grow distant, we separate naturally, no dishonor, no exile, just a relationship that didn't work. It sounded reasonable, logical, like a clean solution to an impossible problem, so why did it make me feel hollow? And you're okay with that? I asked. With pretending to be bonded to someone you don't even like? I didn't say I don't like you, Sera said, and there was something in her tone, something I couldn't identify. I barely know you, David, but from what I've seen, you are kind, skilled, and brave enough to stand before the council rather than abandon me. Those are qualities worth respecting. Respecting isn't the same as wanting to be bonded to, I pointed out. She smiled, but it was sad. No, it's not. But it's enough to build a temporary alliance on. Enough to survive the next few weeks without losing everything we've worked for. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell something like cinnamon and rain on her. So here is what I propose. We attend the ceremonial events. We allow my people to see us together. We present ourselves as a legitimate bonding pair, and in return, I will teach you everything you need to know about Valoran customs. protect you from political complications, and ensure you can continue your work here without interference. And when it ends? I asked. When it ends, she said quietly. We part as friends, hopefully as allies, definitely, and we move forward with our lives. You return to Earth eventually. I return to my duties, and this becomes simply a strange chapter in both our stories. She held out her hand, palm up, in what I recognized as a Valoran gesture of agreement. Do we have an accord? I should have taken it immediately, should have been grateful for the clean exit strategy, the logical solution, but something made me hesitate, something in the way she held herself, rigid and controlled, like she was bracing for rejection even as she offered compromise. Sera, I said slowly, what if... I stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence, not sure what I was even asking. What if what? She prompted, her hand still extended. What if this becomes real? The words were out before I could stop them, hanging in the glowing air between us, and I watched her expression shift, surprise, confusion. Something that might have been hope, quickly buried. It won't, she said, but her voice wavered. We won't let it, that's not what this is. Right? I said, taking her hand, feeling the warmth of her palm against mine. That's not what this is. But even as I agreed, even as we sealed our accord with that touch, I wondered if we were both lying to ourselves. And that thought terrified me more than the council, more than the ceremonies, more than any of this. He didn't know the truth yet. Didn't know that in 2 days we'd be standing together in front of thousands of Valorans for the ceremonial declaration. Didn't know that Sera's closest friends were already planning elaborate celebrations, and definitely didn't know that every moment we spent pretending was making it harder to remember this wasn't supposed to be real. But those revelations were coming faster than either of us expected. The ceremonial hall was packed, and I mean absolutely filled with Valorans in formal armor that gleamed like liquid gold under crystalline lights. Their faces painted with traditional markings I'd spent the last 2 days learning to recognize, and standing backstage in borrowed ceremonial robes that felt simultaneously too heavy and not protective enough, I realized this had spiraled way beyond a simple misunderstanding into something resembling a cultural event. Sera stood beside me, her armor polished to mirror brightness, her hair braided with silver threads that caught the light when she moved, and she looked, God, she looked incredible, regal and fierce and beautiful in a way that made my chest tight. And that feeling, that unwanted, inconvenient feeling, was becoming a serious problem. You're staring, she said quietly, not looking at me, focused on the curtain that separated us from the crowd. I'm observing, I corrected, trying for casual and probably failing. There's a difference. Her lips quirked slightly, the smallest hint of a smile. Observing what, exactly? Trying to figure out if you're as terrified as I am, I admitted. She did look at me then, her amber eyes searching mine. I am a Valoran warrior. We do not experience terror. Sera, I am absolutely terrified, she whispered, and the vulnerability in her voice made something protective surge in my chest. I have led troops into combat. I have faced down enemy warships. I have stared death in the face more times than I can count, and none of it compares to standing here, about to lie to my entire people. I reached out without thinking, took her hand, squeezed gently. We don't have to do this. We can walk out right now. Tell them the truth, deal with whatever consequences come. No, she said firmly, but she didn't pull her hand away. We've come this far. We finish what we started, together, like we agreed. Together? I repeated, and the word felt heavier than it should. The ceremony coordinator, an elderly Valoran woman with intricate face markings that indicated a lifetime of service, appeared beside us. It's time. The council awaits. The people await. Are you prepared? No, I said honestly. Yes, Sera said, squeezing my hand once before releasing it. We're ready. The curtain opened, sound rushed in. Not applause, but something deeper. A resonant humming that I'd learned was the Valoran expression of collective approval. And we walked forward, side by side, into the light. The stage overlooked the entire hall, thousands of faces turned toward us, and at the center of it all, seated on a raised platform, were the 7 council members, the silver-haired elder standing as we approached, her expression unreadable. David Chen of Earth. Her voice boomed through the hall, amplified somehow without visible technology. Commander Sera of the 5th Tactical Unit, you stand before your people to declare your bond, to announce your choosing, to begin the sacred journey of joining. Do you come here of your own will? We do, Sera said clearly, her voice steady, and I echoed her, my own voice sounding small by comparison. The elder nodded. Then speak your truth, Commander Sera. Tell your people why you have chosen this human. What qualities you see in him that warrant such a sacred bond. This was the part we'd rehearsed, the carefully crafted speech that would satisfy cultural requirements without actually lying. And I watched Sera's posture shift, becoming formal, ceremonial. I choose David Chen because he possesses courage. When faced with danger, he steps forward rather than back. When confronted with the unknown, he adapts rather than retreats. When asked to help, he acts without hesitation or thought for his own safety. These are the qualities of a warrior, regardless of his species. And these are the qualities I value above all others. The hall hummed again, deeper, approving, and I felt the weight of thousands of eyes on me, judging, measuring, deciding if I was worthy. The elder turned to me. And you, David Chen, why have you chosen Commander Sera? We hadn't rehearsed my part as thoroughly. Sera had said I should speak from the heart, that authenticity would read better than practiced words. But standing there, looking at her, I realized I didn't need to lie about this part. I choose Sera because she's the strongest person I've ever met, I said, and my voice came out rougher than intended. Not just physically, though she could probably bench press me without trying, but mentally, emotionally. She faces impossible situations and finds solutions. She carries the weight of her entire unit and makes it look easy. She's stubborn and proud and absolutely terrified of showing weakness, but she showed it to me, trusted me with it, and that. I paused, swallowing hard. That means something. Sera's eyes had gone wide, surprised, something vulnerable flickering across her face before she controlled it. And the hall's humming intensified, vibrating through the floor, through my bones. The elder smiled, actually smiled. These are good words, honest words. The council accepts your declaration. You may proceed to the ceremonial binding. A younger council member stepped forward carrying a length of silver cord, intricate and braided, shimmering with embedded lights, and I felt panic spike because we hadn't discussed this part, hadn't prepared for whatever came next. The elder explained, the cord represents your connection, temporary now, but growing stronger with each phase of bonding. David Chen, take Commander Sera's hand. I did, her palm warm against mine, her fingers trembling just slightly. Commander Sera, take David Chen's hand. She gripped tighter. The council member wrapped the cord around our joined hands, looping it in a pattern that looked simultaneously random and deeply intentional. And with each loop, the embedded lights pulsed brighter, warmer. This cord will remain with you for the next 7 days, the elder intoned, a physical reminder of your bond, a symbol of your commitment. You will not remove it until the next phase begins. Do you accept this requirement? We do, Sera said. We do? I echoed, staring at our bound hands, at the glowing cord, at the reality of what we'd just done. The ceremony continued, blessings spoken in Valoran that I only partly understood, symbolic offerings of water and fire and earth brought forward by different council members. And through it all, Sera and I stood together, hands bound, presenting a united front to her entire people. When it finally ended, when the last blessing was spoken and the hall erupted into that deep, resonant humming again, we were allowed to leave, to exit through a side door that led to a private chamber where we could, supposedly, celebrate our new bond in peace. The moment the door closed, Sera sagged against the wall, eyes closed. That was the most difficult thing I have ever done. You were perfect, I said, and meant it. I'm the one who went off script with the whole strongest person I've ever met thing. Sorry if that was too much. It wasn't, she said quickly, opening her eyes. It was perfect, exactly what they needed to hear. You made it believable, right? I said, ignoring the way her words stung slightly. Believable, that's what matters. She pushed off the wall, moved closer, our bound hands forcing proximity. David, I didn't mean, it's fine. I cut her off. We're playing roles. I get it. You did great. I did okay, mission accomplished. You did more than okay, she insisted, and there was something fierce in her voice now. You stood in front of my entire people and defended me, defended us, defended this bond they believe in. That takes courage. Or stupidity, I muttered, looking down at the cord wrapped around our hands. How exactly are we supposed to function like this for a week? Carefully, she said, and I caught the hint of amusement in her tone. We'll have to coordinate our movements, stay relatively close, sleep in the same quarters. Wait, what? My head snapped up. The cord cannot be removed, she explained patiently, and it's only about 2 meters long, which means we literally cannot be more than 2 meters apart for the next 7 days. Sleeping, eating, working, everything. I stared at her, then at the cord, then back at her. You knew about this part, didn't you? I may have forgotten to mention it, she admitted, and had the audacity to look slightly guilty. I was concerned you would refuse the ceremony if you knew. You're damn right I would have. I stopped, took a breath, forced myself to think logically rather than panic. Okay, we can work with this. We'll set up a workspace that accommodates both of us, arrange sleeping quarters with separate areas, establish boundaries. David? She interrupted gently. We're supposed to be bonding, remember? If we act too separated, too careful about boundaries, people will notice. They'll question the legitimacy of our connection. So what are you suggesting? She looked uncomfortable. I'm suggesting we treat this week as an opportunity to build genuine friendship. We're going to be forced into proximity anyway. We might as well use it to actually get to know each other. Make this arrangement easier for both of us. It made sense, frustrating sense. Fine, but ground rules first. No unnecessary touching, no. The Valorans will expect touching, she interrupted. We're bonded, David, holding hands, standing close, casual affection. These things are normal, expected, required even. Required affection? I said slowly. Do you hear how insane that sounds? I hear how necessary it sounds, she countered. Look, I don't like this any more than you do, but we agreed to see this through, and that means committing fully. Half measures will only raise suspicion. She was right. I hated it, but she was right. Okay, so we're basically method acting our way through a fake relationship while literally tied together. Great. What could possibly go wrong? Nothing, she said firmly. As long as we remember what this is, an arrangement, a temporary solution, nothing more. Nothing more, I agreed, but looking at her in the soft light of the private chamber. Our hands still bound together, the silver cord pulsing gently between us. I wondered how long we could maintain that fiction. The next 7 days were going to be interesting, and by interesting I meant absolutely chaotic, but I didn't know that yet. Didn't know that sharing quarters with Sera would reveal sides of her she'd never shown anyone. Didn't know that forced proximity would break down walls we'd both carefully constructed. And I definitely didn't know that somewhere in the middle of pretending to be bonded, the line between performance and reality would start to blur so completely that neither of us would be able to find it anymore. But that realization was coming faster than either of us expected. The first night bound together was exactly as awkward as you'd imagine, except worse because Valoran quarters were designed for single occupants, which meant Sera's personal space consisted of one main room with a sleeping platform built into the wall, a small washing station behind a privacy screen, and exactly 0 separate areas where I could pretend the situation wasn't happening. I'll take the floor, I said immediately, eyeing the sleeping platform that looked maybe wide enough for one person. Definitely not two. Don't be ridiculous, Sera said, already removing her ceremonial outer armor with practiced efficiency. And I very deliberately turned away because watching felt too intimate, too real. The platform is designed to accommodate Valoran size. It will fit both of us easily. Easily is a strong word when we're literally tied together, I pointed out, keeping my gaze fixed on the far wall. And I'm not comfortable just assuming. David, her voice was gentle but firm. Look at me. I turned slowly, and she'd stripped down to the base layer suit that all Valorans wore under their armor, dark and form-fitting and absolutely not helping my concentration. We are both adults. We are both capable of sharing sleeping space without making it complicated. This is purely practical. Right? I said. Practical. Got it, totally normal. Not weird at all. She almost smiled. You're panicking. I'm not. You're vibrating with anxiety, she said. using my own words from days ago against me. It's actually somewhat endearing. I don't panic, I protested weakly. You're terrible at lying, she observed, moving toward the sleeping platform, our bound hands forcing me to follow. Come, we both need rest. Tomorrow will be equally challenging. The platform was larger than it looked. I'd give her that, some kind of memory material that adjusted to body weight and temperature, and lying there on my back, staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware of Sera beside me, our joined hands resting between us, I thought this might actually be the most surreal moment of my entire life. You're still tense? She said quietly after several minutes of silence. Can you blame me? No, she admitted. I suppose not. This is strange for me as well. I turned my head to look at her. You don't seem strange. You seem completely calm. I'm Valoran, she said, as if that explained everything. We're trained to maintain composure under any circumstance, but internally, she paused. Internally, I'm navigating entirely unfamiliar territory. Yeah, I said softly. Me too. We lay there in the dim light, the cord between our hands pulsing with those embedded lights, creating soft patterns on the ceiling, and gradually, slowly, I felt the tension start to ease, not disappearing but becoming bearable. David, Sera said eventually, may I ask you something personal? Sure. Why did you agree to this? She asked. Truly, you could have rejected me at the council, taken exile, returned to Earth. Why didn't you? I considered lying, giving her the easy answer, but something about the darkness and the quiet made honesty feel necessary. Because you looked terrified, and I couldn't stand the thought of making that worse, because destroying your career over a misunderstanding felt wrong, and because I stopped. Because, she prompted gently, because despite this entire situation being insane, I didn't want to hurt you, I finished quietly. She was silent for a long moment. That's a kind reason. It's a human reason, I said. We're big on avoiding hurting people we respect. Is that what you feel? She asked. Respect. I thought about it. Yeah, and maybe something else too, but I'm not sure what to call it yet. Neither am I, she whispered, and there was something in her voice that made my heart beat faster. David, I need you to know, when I spoke at the ceremony, when I listed your qualities, I wasn't lying. You are brave. You are kind. You do step forward when others step back. These things are true. Sera, let me finish, she interrupted. I also need you to know that if circumstances were different, if we had met without armor malfunctions and cultural complications, I would want to know you anyway, as a friend at minimum, perhaps as something more. The confession hung in the air between us, dangerous and honest. You can't say things like that, I said. Not when we're supposed to be keeping this fake. I know, she agreed. But tonight, in the dark, with 7 days of forced proximity ahead of us, I wanted you to know the truth. Tomorrow we can go back to pretending, but tonight, just for a moment, I wanted to be honest. I turned toward her, our faces inches apart. Honesty is dangerous. So is dishonesty, she countered. More dangerous, actually, because it builds walls instead of bridges. And what are we building? I asked. She smiled, small and uncertain. I don't know yet, but I think I want to find out. The next morning started with the immediate problem of basic functions. Turns out coordinating bathroom routines while bound together requires communication skills neither of us had developed yet, and the privacy screen became our best friend as we figured out timing and strategic cord positioning that preserved dignity while accepting proximity. This is humiliating, I muttered while Sera waited on the other side of the screen. This is efficiency, she corrected. And before you complain more, consider that I am equally uncomfortable. Valorans value privacy highly. This violates every instinct I have. So we're both miserable. Great, equality achieved. She laughed, actually laughed, the sound surprising and warm. Your humor is very strange, David Chen. Strange good or strange bad? I haven't decided yet, she said, but I heard the smile in her voice. Breakfast was a shared meal in the communal dining hall, which meant performing our bond in front of hundreds of Valorans who watched our every move with intense interest. And I learned quickly that bonded pairs were apparently expected to feed each other occasionally. A custom Sera had definitely forgotten to mention until a younger warrior asked why we weren't participating in proper bonding behavior. It's a human custom to feed ourselves, I tried explaining. The warrior looked confused. But how do you show care for your mate? Sera smoothly intercepted, taking a piece of fruit from my plate and offering it to me. Her expression challenging, daring me to refuse, and what was I supposed to do? Make a scene? I took the fruit from her fingers, and she smiled, victorious. David is still learning our ways. Be patient with him. The warrior nodded approvingly and moved on, leaving me glaring at Sera. A little warning next time? Where's the fun in that? She asked innocently. You're enjoying this, I accused. Perhaps a little, she admitted. Your reactions are extremely expressive. The rest of the day followed similar patterns, work in my repair bay with Sera observing because she literally couldn't be anywhere else, and I discovered she had opinions about my organizational system, strong opinions that she wasn't shy about sharing. You keep your micro-tools mixed with your macro-tools, she observed. This is inefficient. It's organized by project type, I defended. It's chaos, she countered. May I reorganize? Absolutely not. She raised an eyebrow. David, we're going to be working in this space together for the next 6 days. Let me help optimize. Sera, I swear to God, touch my tool organization and I will. I stopped, not actually having a threat that made sense. You'll what? She asked, amused. I'll reorganize your armor storage, I said. She looked genuinely horrified. You wouldn't dare. Try me. We stared at each other and then, simultaneously, we both started laughing, the tension breaking into something lighter, easier, and I realized this was working. Somehow, against all logic, we were actually figuring out how to exist together. That evening, back in quarters, exhausted from maintaining public performance all day, we collapsed onto the sleeping platform with significantly less awkwardness than the night before, and Sera turned toward me, our bound hands between us. David, can I tell you something I've never told anyone? That sounds ominous, I said, but nodded. I'm tired, she said quietly. Not physically, mentally, emotionally, I'm tired of being Commander Sera, of always being strong, always being controlled, always being the person others look to for answers, and this week, being bound to you, it's the first time in years I've had an excuse to be something other than that role, because I'm not just the commander right now, I'm also someone's bonded partner, even if it's pretend, and that gives me permission to be softer, more vulnerable, and She paused, swallowing hard. I've missed feeling like a person instead of just a position. My chest ached. Sera, you are a person, an incredible person, and if your people can't see that without you being bonded to someone, that's their failure, not yours. Maybe, she said, but right now, with you, I feel seen in a way I haven't in a very long time, and I wanted to thank you for that. You don't need to thank me, I said softly. I'm just here, that's all. Just here is more than you realize, she whispered, and before I could respond, she shifted closer, resting her head against my shoulder, our bound hands settling comfortably between us. Is this okay? It wasn't okay. It was dangerous. It was blurring lines we'd promised not to blur. But I didn't push her away. Yeah, it's okay. She relaxed against me, her breathing evening out, and I lay there in the dark, feeling the weight of her trust, the warmth of her presence, and wondering how I was supposed to walk away from this when the 7 days ended. What happened next changed everything in ways neither of us saw coming. Day 5 of being bound together arrived with a problem neither of us had anticipated. My hands were shaking, not from nervousness or fear, but from something more immediate and concerning. Sera noticed immediately, her warrior instincts sharp, even half asleep. David, she said, sitting up quickly, forcing me to follow because of the cord. What's wrong? Nothing? I lied, pulling my hand back instinctively, which only made the trembling more obvious. Just tired, didn't sleep great. Her eyes narrowed. You're lying, and you're terrible at it. Let me see your hand. Sera, it's fine. Now, David, that's not a request. I sighed, extending our bound hands where she could examine them properly, and she studied my fingers with the intensity she usually reserved for battle strategy, noting the slight tremor, the way my grip had weakened over the past day. How long has this been happening? Since yesterday, I admitted. It's not a big deal, probably just nerve compression from sleeping in a weird position. Or it's a reaction to the bonding cord. She interrupted, her voice sharp with concern. Humans and Valorans have different physiological responses to our technology. I should have considered this possibility. I should have checked. God, David, why didn't you tell me? Because we have 2 more days left in this performance? I said. And I'm not going to ruin everything because of a little hand tremor. This isn't little. She cut me off, already moving toward the door, dragging me with her. We're going to medical now, and if the cord is causing harm, we're removing it immediately. I don't care what the council says. Sera, stop. I pulled back against her momentum, forcing her to face me. If we remove the cord early, people will know something's wrong. They'll question the bond, question us. Everything we've worked for this week will be for nothing. I don't care, she said, and there was something fierce and desperate in her expression. I'm not letting you hurt yourself to maintain a fiction, David. I won't do it. It's not just a fiction anymore though, is it? The words escaped before I could stop them, hanging in the space between us like a confession neither of us was ready for. She froze. What? Come on, Sera, I said, and my voice came out rougher than intended. You can't tell me the last 4 days haven't changed anything. That sleeping beside each other, working together, learning each other's patterns and quirks and fears hasn't shifted something fundamental. I know we said this was temporary. I know we agreed it was just performance, but somewhere along the way it stopped being fake for me, and I think I swallowed hard. I think maybe it stopped being fake for you too. She stared at me, her amber eyes wide, vulnerable. David, we can't. Can't what? I challenged. Can't admit that forced proximity actually worked, that spending every moment together made us actually care about each other. Can't acknowledge that what started as a misunderstanding has become something real? You're injured, she said weakly. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in days. I interrupted. Sera, I like you. Not because we're bound together. Not because your culture expects it, but because you're brilliant and stubborn and secretly hilarious, because you snore a little when you're really tired and you reorganized my tools when you thought I wasn't looking, because you genuinely couldn't stand the inefficiency, because you told me about feeling trapped by your role and trusted me with that vulnerability. Stop, she whispered, and I saw tears gathering in her eyes. Please stop. Why? I asked gently. Because if you keep going, she said, her voice breaking, I'll have to admit that I feel the same way, and if I admit that, then this stops being a manageable situation and becomes something terrifying, something that could actually hurt us both when it ends. What if it doesn't have to end? The question hung between us, impossible and necessary. Sera pulled her hand free from mine, the movement awkward because of the cord, and pressed her palms against her face. David, you don't understand what you're suggesting. A real bond between us would mean staying here, permanently, leaving Earth, becoming part of Valoran society, giving up everything you've built. Or you could come to Earth with me, I said, the idea forming as I spoke. Leave the military, explore new things, be Sera the person instead of Commander Sera. I can't abandon my people, she said immediately. My unit depends on me, the Valorans on this ship need me. They need a commander, I corrected. They'd survive without you. The question is, would you survive staying in a role that's slowly crushing you? She lowered her hands, and I saw the war playing out across her face. Duty versus desire, responsibility versus personal happiness. You're asking me to choose. I'm asking you to consider that maybe there's a choice to make, I said softly. Sera, I'm not saying run away with me tomorrow. I'm saying let's figure this out together. Really together? No performance? No pretending, just 2 people who accidentally found something worth keeping in the middle of a disaster. Before she could respond, my hand spasmed sharply, pain shooting up my arm, and I gasped, doubling over, the tremor intensifying into something that felt like electricity racing through my nerves. Medical now, Sera said, all business suddenly, supporting my weight. Arguments can wait, your health cannot. The medical bay was sleek and efficient, like everything else on the Valoran ship, and the doctor, a stern woman with decades of experience etched into the lines of her face, examined my hand with thorough competence before delivering her verdict. The bonding cord is incompatible with human neurology. The energy it emits is interfering with your nervous system. Another 2 days and you could have permanent damage. Sera's face went pale. Remove it immediately. Commander, the doctor said carefully. Removing a bonding cord before the ceremonial period ends is... I don't care, Sera cut her off. Remove it now, that's an order. The doctor hesitated, then nodded, reaching for a specialized tool, and within minutes, the cord that had bound us together for 5 days fell away, the lights fading, leaving my hand free but feeling strangely empty. David will need treatment for the nerve damage, the doctor explained. Nothing permanent, but he should rest, avoid strenuous activity, and definitely avoid any further exposure to Valoran bonding technology. Understood, Sera said. But she wouldn't look at me, wouldn't meet my eyes. The doctor left us alone in the examination room, silence stretching uncomfortably, and I finally broke it. Sera, we need to talk about how I almost permanently injured you because of my selfish desire to protect my career, she said, her voice flat, cold. About how I convinced you to participate in a ceremony that could have disabled you. About how I prioritized my reputation over your safety. That's not what happened, I protested. That's exactly what happened, she said, and now she did look at me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I knew the risks, David. I knew that human physiology might react differently to our technology. And I proceeded anyway because I was too much of a coward to face my counsel honestly, to admit that the great Commander Sera made a mistake, and you nearly paid the price for my cowardice. Sera, you couldn't have known. I should have checked, she interrupted. I should have consulted medical before we even started this charade. I should have protected you instead of using you, and now I have to live with the fact that I hurt someone who... She stopped abruptly. Someone who what? I prompted. She shook her head. It doesn't matter. What matters is this ends now. We'll tell the council the truth, that the bonding was never real, that I manipulated you into participating. I'll take full responsibility, accept whatever consequences come. Like hell you will, I said, standing despite the lingering pain in my hand. Sera, I went into this with eyes open, I made my own choices, and if you think I'm going to let you fall on your sword alone, you don't know me at all. David? No, listen. I cut her off. Yes, this situation got complicated, yes. There were risks neither of us fully understood, but none of that changes what happened over the last 5 days. None of that erases the fact that we became friends. Maybe more than friends, and I'm not letting you throw that away because you're scared. I'm not scared, she said automatically. You're terrified? I countered. Terrified of feeling something real, terrified of admitting you might want something outside of duty and command, terrified that maybe, just maybe, I'm right about us. There is no us, she said, but her voice wavered. There can't be, not after this, not after I hurt you. You didn't hurt me, I said firmly. The cord did, the technology did, circumstances did. But you, Sera, you've done nothing but try to navigate an impossible situation with grace and honesty. And if you want to know the truth, these last 5 days, even with the pain, even with the complications, have been some of the best days I've had in years, because I got to know you, really know you, and that's worth more than you realize. She opened her mouth, closed it, and I saw the exact moment her defenses crumbled, tears spilling over. I don't know how to do this, David. I don't know how to be anything other than what I've always been. I don't know how to choose myself over duty. I don't know how to... I stepped forward, carefully took her face in my hands, my injured hand trembling slightly but steady enough for this. Then let me help you figure it out, together, really together this time, no cords, no ceremonies, no council expectations, just us. Just us? She repeated, like she was testing the words, tasting their possibility. Just us? I confirmed. And maybe that's terrifying. Maybe it's complicated. Maybe it won't work. But Sera, don't you think it's worth trying? Don't you think what we found in the middle of this disaster deserves a chance? She closed her eyes, leaning into my touch. Yes. God help me. Yes, I think it's worth trying. Then let's try, I said simply. She opened her eyes and I saw decision settle into her expression. Okay. But we do this honestly. No more pretending, no more performances. We tell the council everything. Accept the consequences. And if there's still an us after that, then we figure out what that means. Deal, I said. And Sera, whatever happens, whatever the council decides, I'm not going anywhere, not unless you tell me to. I won't, she whispered. I think I'm done pushing away people who actually see me. Good, I said. Because I'm pretty sure I'm falling for you, and it would be really inconvenient if you pushed me away now. She laughed, watery and surprised. Pretty sure. Okay. Definitely falling for you, I corrected. Completely, absolutely, inconveniently falling for you. That's… She paused, searching for words. That's the most human thing you've ever said. Is that a compliment? It's honest, she said. And I think I'm falling for you too, David Chen, which is terrifying and wonderful and absolutely not what I planned when you agreed to repair my armor 6 days ago. 6 days? I repeated, shaking my head. Has it really only been 6 days? Apparently disaster is an accelerated bonding method, she said, smiling now, really smiling. Should we trademark that? I asked. Could be useful for other cross-species couples navigating cultural complications. She pulled me closer, our foreheads touching. Let's survive telling the council first, then we can consider business ventures. Practical, I observed. One of us has to be, she said. We stood there in the medical bay, no cord binding us together anymore, no ceremony requirements, no cultural expectations, just two people who'd found something unexpected in the chaos, something worth fighting for, and I knew, absolutely knew, that whatever happened next, whatever consequences we faced, we'd face them together, actually together, and that made everything else manageable. The council meeting happened the next morning, and walking into that chamber again, this time with Sera beside me but not bound to me, felt like stepping into entirely different territory. We weren't here to perform or pretend or satisfy cultural expectations. We were here to tell the truth, consequences be damned. The silver-haired elder watched us approach, her ancient eyes knowing. Commander Sera, David Chen, you requested this emergency session. Speak your truth. Sera stepped forward, her posture straight, her voice clear. Council, I must confess to deceiving you. The bonding ritual David and I participated in was not genuine. It began as an accident, a misunderstanding of customs during armor repair, and I perpetuated it to protect my career and David's position here. We have not been truly bonded. We have been performing an elaborate fiction, and I take full responsibility for this deception. The chamber was silent, tension so thick I could taste it, and then the elder did something I didn't expect. She smiled. Commander Sera, do you truly believe we didn't know? Sera froze. What? You think we are so blind to human nature and Valoran nature that we couldn't see what was happening? The elder continued. We saw the initial accident, we saw your panic, we saw David's honorable attempt to protect you, and we saw an opportunity. An opportunity for what? I asked, confused. The military council member spoke. To teach you both something important, Commander Sera. You have been so consumed by duty that you've forgotten how to be simply Sera and David. You've been so focused on remaining an outsider that you've never allowed yourself to truly connect with anyone here, forcing you together, making you rely on each other, exposing you to each other's vulnerabilities. This was the goal from the beginning. You manipulated us, Sera said, and I heard anger creeping into her voice. We provided opportunity, the elder corrected. What you did with that opportunity was entirely your choice. You could have maintained the fiction and learned nothing, or you could have, she gestured at us, done exactly what you did, broken through your own defenses and found something genuine. I stared at her. So this whole thing, the ceremony, the cord, the week of being bound together, that was all intentional? The cord's incompatibility with human neurology was an unfortunate oversight, the elder admitted. For that, we apologize. But yes, David, this was intentional, designed to force both of you to confront truths you've been avoiding. Sera's hands were shaking. You had no right. We had every right. The military member interrupted. You are our commander, your well-being is our concern, and watching you slowly disappear into duty while denying yourself any personal connection was unacceptable. We intervened, and judging by the way you two are standing now, together by choice rather than obligation, it worked. The elder leaned forward. So the question now is not whether you deceived us, but whether you will continue the bond you've discovered, truly, honestly, without ceremony or expectation. Sera looked at me, and I saw uncertainty and hope warring in her expression. David, I took her hand, the touch simple and natural now. I already told you my answer. I'm all in if you are. She smiled. That beautiful, unguarded smile I'd only seen glimpses of before. I'm all in. The elder nodded approvingly. Then this council recognizes your bond as genuine, Commander Sera. You are granted leave to explore this relationship without military interference. David Chen, you are granted permanent residence aboard this vessel and full access to all cultural education resources. May your bond strengthen with honesty rather than ceremony. We were dismissed, just like that, walked out of the chamber hand in hand, and standing in the corridor outside, Sera started laughing, real and unrestrained. They manipulated us. Completely. I agreed. Should we be angry about that? Probably, she said. But I'm too relieved to manage it right now. Relieved? That it's real, she explained. That we're real, that I didn't imagine the connection we built, that you actually want this too. Sera, I said seriously. I want this more than I've wanted anything in a long time. You're stubborn and intense and completely terrible at accepting help. And I'm pretty sure spending more time with you is going to drive me crazy. But it's the good kind of crazy, the kind worth experiencing. That's very romantic, she said dryly. I'm working on it, I defended. She pulled me closer. Right there in the corridor where anyone could see. David, thank you. For agreeing to this disaster. For staying when you could have left. For seeing me when I'd forgotten how to see myself. Thank you for letting me, I said simply. She kissed me then, soft and tentative and absolutely perfect. And when we pulled apart, I saw other Valorans in the corridor, watching, smiling, approving. Well, I said, guess our cover is completely blown now. Good, she said. I'm tired of covers. We walked through the ship together. No cord binding us. No ceremony requirements. Just two people who'd accidentally found something extraordinary in the middle of a disaster. And I thought about how 6 days ago I'd been convinced this was the worst misunderstanding of my life. But now, walking beside Sera, feeling her hand warm in mine, I realized sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected chaos. The story could end there, neat and resolved, but life rarely works that way. And our story, Sera's and mine, was really just beginning. We still had to figure out how a relation, navigate cultural differences and practical logistics, still had to face the reality that love, even real love, requires work and compromise and patience. But standing there with her, knowing we'd face all of it together, I wasn't worried. Because if we could survive forced bonding ceremonies and incompatible technology and council manipulation, we could probably survive anything. So, Sera said as we reached her quarters. Our quarters now apparently. What happens next? Next, I said, pulling her close. We figure it out as we go. Together. No scripts. No expectations, just us learning how to be us. I like the sound of that, she whispered. Yeah, I agreed. Me too. And maybe that was the real lesson the council wanted us to learn, that sometimes the most meaningful connections come not from careful planning or cultural ceremony, but from stumbling into situations we never expected, being forced to rely on people we barely knew, and discovering that underneath all our defenses and duties and carefully constructed identities, we're all just looking for someone who sees us clearly and chooses us anyway. Sera had chosen me, I'd chosen her, and everything else, all the complications and logistics and cultural navigation, we'd figure out together, one day at a time, one moment at a time, one stubborn conversation at a time. I only helped an alien warrior with her armor, her people thought I was stripping her, and somehow, impossibly, that misunderstanding led to the most real thing I'd ever experienced. Funny how life works sometimes, how disasters become doorways, how accidents become opportunities, how helping someone fix broken armor can lead to fixing broken hearts. If you loved this story of accidental love and cultural chaos, hit that subscribe button because there are more tales of humans and aliens navigating the beautiful mess of connection waiting for you. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. And if you're still here reading this, comment, I finished. So I know you made it all the way through. Readers who finish deserve recognition, and I want to celebrate every single one of you who invested in David and Sera's journey. Did this story hit different than other sci-fi romances you've read? Did the forced proximity thing work for you? Did the cultural complications feel real? Did you believe in David and Sera? Tell me everything. I'm here for the essays, the rants, the feelings dumps, all of it. Don't just lurk. Your comment could literally inspire the next story. Drop something below, even if it's just an emoji that captures how you're feeling right now. Let's build a community of people who love humans and aliens figuring out this messy, beautiful thing called connection.